every single person on the planet needs to be able to lead themselves, and that our responsibility as human beings is to lead ourselves to the highest capabilities of what we can do. Anyone that's listening to this, your life is not about you. Your life is about what you do with your life. Leadership is, by definition, holding one's hand and moving people forward. Life is not about business. Life is about holding as many hands as we can and moving as many people in a common aligned goal to a unified vision where we can achieve the highest and greatest potential of everybody. Leadership to me is really about how do you wake up and take care of you first so that you have something left to give to other people.
Remember, adversity is your advantage.
Hey friends, welcome back to another amazing episode of the CEO Show with your host, Bryce Henson, a show dedicated to teaching leadership, promoting capitalism, and defending free speech. I am here with an awesome guest who I just gave an intro to, Rudi Riekstins. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
This is awesome. I am so pumped. Through a mutual friend, we got connected, Amberly Lago. We're here live in Dallas, Texas. You're going to speak. I'm going to learn a lot from you tomorrow, and you're so gracious to take some time and talk a little bit about leadership, business, entrepreneurship, and I'm a student and an expert of leadership. I'm just really excited to learn from you today.
I'm excited to learn from you too. Just in the few moments of us talking, even before we hit record, I was like, I like this guy's brain. I like the way he thinks. I like the way his brain's firing, I like the questions that you ask. I'm looking forward to a great conversation, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I want to dive into leadership and all that, but interestingly enough, we were just talking off film. You're originally from South Africa. So before we get started, if you can tell our audience, what do you do? And then give us a little backstory in terms of how you got here.
I am a high performance coach, and so what I really do is I go into, whether it's an organization or a high performer's life, that could be an athlete, celebrity, or an entrepreneur, and help them achieve their highest and their greatest potential. And what I really mean by that is I hold a vision for somebody who wants to have, be, do, or achieve something, but they just don't know how to get to that next level. And I like to work with high performers because high performers take action. And so what I do can translate to everybody. And the reason I have the distinction is I work first with the leaders of a business because business leaders have employees, and I want to create maximum impact. And so if I can go into a company where there's 3,000 employees, I can support the leader, create the shift of the change in the leader, and then we can go and bring that, and there's a trickle-down effect to everybody inside the company. So that's why I do it inside of business. But my passion really is high performers. I love to study and see what high performers are doing, emulate the results of what they're creating, and then we take those results and apply them to somebody else's life to get similar results. So it's in a nutshell is what I do. How I got here is a totally different question with a unique response, because I believe that everything that ever happens in life is always preparing us for who we get to become. And I never one time set out and said, man, you know what I really want to be? I want to be a business coach. I want to go into companies and tell people how to run companies, because that wasn't something that I ever thought was possible for me. I came from a really small town in South Africa. It was one of those Orange County-like environments where there's extreme wealth, and then, well, there was our family. And we were a loving family, loving parents, 2 brothers, so we were 3 boys. And we came from a beautiful home, had beautiful memories, but there were so many reminders everywhere that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, we didn't have money, and that everybody else had opportunities that we didn't have. And so I grew up not believing that I could achieve anything of worthiness or any, accolades, because everywhere I looked, I either didn't have the car, the house, the clothes, the sandwiches, the lunchbox, the pocket money, the weekends, the trips, the boats. My friends' parents had helicopters. I mean, we're talking about real extreme wealth to where we were. And then added to that, the school system in South Africa was incredibly difficult. And, I went to a school where there was a lot of bullying, a lot of abuse. We would be whipped and caned. And my first memory of school was a teacher calling me stupid and making me sit on a dunce's chair. And she literally said, if you're anything like your brother, you're going to spend the whole year on this chair. You might as well go sit on this dunce's chair right now. And then I asked, what is the dunce's chair? And she's like, that's where the stupid people sit. And then put a dunce hat on my head, which was a red, witch's-like pointed round cone hat. Yeah. Put that on my head and had the word dunce written on it. I wasn't the only kid that sat on that chair that year, to be very clear. But in that moment, to sit on that chair, to see these kids turning and looking at me, I all of a sudden saw terror in their eyes. I processed that as, well, they're looking at stupid, and I felt stupid. And here's the magic, because, my whole school career, I showed up as the class clown. I was the joker. I was never somebody who studied. I never opened books. I never read. I didn't apply myself in any capacity in school. And I didn't do it, not at the time that I knew it, but I didn't do it because I knew if I didn't try, well, that wouldn't hurt my feelings if I didn't do well. But if I tried and I was reminded I was stupid, well, that would be painful. So I just showed up like a joker. And what's so crazy is at 25 years old, I owned 3 companies. I had 60 employees. I had millions in the bank. I was driving nice cars. And, I tell the story of sitting in $2,000 jeans and eating a birthday dinner. And I was all by myself with a great bottle of wine. And I was like, man, I still feel like a 6-year-old boy sitting on a dancer's chair. I still feel stupid. I still don't feel worthy. My girlfriend was cheating on me. All my girlfriends before that were not picture perfect examples of what a relationship should look like, which meant I wasn't making the best decisions for myself or for life. And my friends were stealing money from me. I had business partners that weren't looking after my best interests and looking after theirs. And so my world really was a shambles. And it was a reflection of the mind of a 6-year-old child who still didn't feel worthy. And I started stacking evidence of, well, am I worthy? Literally, I pushed my plate aside. I didn't drink the wine. I sat there and I wrote out a list on a yellow legal pad.
In that moment?
In that moment, I wrote out a list, and I wrote on top, like, am I worthy? Like, am I stupid? Like, have I created anything that's worth having? And I started filling out this whole page. And I just wrote out, like, okay, if you own 3 companies, if you have 60 employees, and if each employee is responsible for 3 people, and I just started looking at what was the impact of what my life was bringing to the world. I was like, man, there's 180 people that rely on me to eat, to live. I'm like, they wouldn't follow me. The 60 employees wouldn't follow me, wouldn't trust me with their families, with their livelihood, if I was stupid, would they? And that was a real question at 25, 26 years old. And it was right around my 26th birthday. And so I don't remember if it was the day of or the day before, but at that moment was when I started stacking evidence. I only share this because, today I get to go into organizations and I work with high-level leaders. I work with some of the biggest companies in the world. And then I work with solo entrepreneurs and just general, public. And every single person I meet feels like that at some time. Mm-hmm. And I always think back to that moment of sitting on my couch and realizing, man, I put all my value and all my worth into something that was outside of me. And I thought money and fame or success was going to free me, was going to make me feel something. And it didn't make me feel anything. In fact, it magnified the emptiness that was in me. And then I spent, another 10 years from that period pouring into myself and learning and honing my skills of who I am as a person and creating these disciplines to shift my way of being and how I showed up in my relationships and my worthiness. And then my life changed, my businesses changed, everything started to shift and change. And now I have something that I can teach. And when I walk into a company and I see anyone, I can relate to where they are, to what they've experienced, and I can move them forward because I went through a 20-year period of the struggle. What I left out of that story was that at 16 years old, I was sitting in a high school gymnasium in my high school, and they called a special assembly. It was a Wednesday, and they brought all the kids in, and we had to sit on the floor. And this man walks in a blue pinstripe suit and a light blue collared shirt, and I was like, man, he looks like money. And the guy took the stage, and he was a motivational business coach. And he started motivating the students. He started telling us, you can have and be and do anything. It was like a Tony Robbins experience to a little classroom of a bunch of school kids. And I sat there and I was electrified. Right? I sat in that room thinking, God has just tapped me on the shoulder and I know what I've been put on this earth to do. I am meant to motivate, move, and inspire and support people in life. And nothing has ever been more real or more true to me than that moment. And then when he left that stage, I was like electrified. But then my limiting beliefs came back in of who's going to listen to you, dummy? Mm-hmm. who's going to, you've never built anything. You've never done anything. You're 16 years old. You're stupid. You're getting C's, just constantly bombarding me. And at no point in time did I turn around and say, man, I'm getting C's and I've never done homework. I'm getting C's and I've never opened up a book. I'm getting C's and I'm like writing 4-hour, exams, not even knowing what subject I'm walking into. Like, come on, man. And it just the restacking of the evidence. But that whole journey from 16 to 36 was I guess, my textbook for the work I get to do today and how I get to show up and support people to lessen their time in that pain, because it doesn't have to take 20 years.
Oh, Rudi, my man, holy smokes, you fire me up just being in your presence. I really appreciate that story, that insight. So much that I related to, even for me, and don't have a dunce hat story, but feeling insecure and not worthy. And interestingly enough, my story comes from humble beginnings for first world standards as well. I lived on the opposite side of the train tracks with all my friends, so I can understand in many different ways, which also shaped me as it certainly did you. I want to talk a little bit about high performers. You kind of talked about that's your passion. You describe them as action takers. How else would you define a high performer?
You know, a high performer is somebody that is not lacking the commitment to get the work done. You see, people want something in life. Everybody wants something in life. But high performers tend to achieve what it is that they want, or at least a variation of what it is that they want, because they believe that what they want is not only possible, but they believe it's possible for them. And you see, if we reverse engineer that, the only reason anybody doesn't have anything is because they either don't believe that what they want or desire is possible, or they don't believe that it's possible for them, which means they know that it's possible, but it's possible for Elon Musk, it's possible for you, it's possible for Rudy, but man, it ain't possible for me. And if it's not possible for me, they don't put in the work, they don't do the commitment. And so high performers are really quick to say, I have a goal, a dream, or a vision, to clarify what that is, but then they committed to what it is that they need to do. And I really value and appreciate somebody who takes themselves more seriously than somebody else. And that they don't wait for somebody else to validate who they are or where they want to go or what they want to do. They validate themselves. And they validate themselves by being committed to the task. And then they do the work. When you do the work, you reap the reward. And so for me, I just love excellence. I love people that wake up and say, I'm going to do it better than anybody else. You know, love or hate him, Tom Brady is just an incredible example of how can you do something that nobody else has ever done, defying what everybody else has said is possible. And sure, you know, he's done many things to support him in the longevity of his career. But the disciplines that he has, and at a time when he was already the greatest quarterback in the history of the game, and we could say arguably, but he really is. I mean, if you look at everything that he's done, everything that he's achieved, but he was still the first person in the building, the last person out of the building. He was still watching more tape than anybody else. He put in all the reps, he put in all the work. You know, I read 2 days ago that there was an interview with Tiger Woods, and they said to Tiger Woods, now that he's nearing the end of his professional career before he goes into the next phase, I guess, of his career, and they were saying, you know, what is your regimen? And he said, I touch a golf ball, like club to face of a golf ball, 1,000 times a day, every day. I can be on a vacation, I can be on my yacht, it doesn't matter. 1,000 contacts with a club and a golf ball every day. He's like, and I can dice it up any way I want. It can be 1,000 chips and then I'm good. Or it can be 100 putts, it can be 1,000, you know, like 500 chips and then 400, you know, long drives. He decides what that looks like, but it's 1,000 contacts every single day. You don't become the greatest golfer in the history of the world without having a practice or a discipline with the commitment that says, no matter what, that's what I'm doing. Because if you wake up and say, man, this is what I'm going to do today, you're going to achieve it. Most people wake up and they're like, man, I really wish I could be better. And there's the difference between I wish and I am, or I'm going to, or I did. Then, and that I think is really what defines the difference between somebody that's a high achiever and somebody who wants to be a high achiever.
Amen to that. Similar type kind of thread here, but both the guys, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, lead themselves first and foremost more than, you know, the vast majority of human nature. I'm a huge fan, student, leadership expert, all into one as well. And I feel like leadership, I love it because you get to pour into people, you get to build people up, you get to create relationships, you get to create teams and align a vision towards a common purpose. And that takes effort, that takes self-leadership first and foremost. So why are you attracted to leadership? Why have you gone on this journey? And how would you define leadership in your own words?
So I think my response is going to surprise you, because I don't think I ever set out to be a leadership anything. You know, at 16, I knew I wanted to motivate and move people. I knew that I was put on this earth to do something really big and profound. And I think that that is true for every person on the planet. I think we all have something really big and profound to do. But for me, I felt the need or the calling to move and inspire people to live their highest and their greatest potential. I only do it in leadership because leadership is usually where I have access to the most people. And I said that in the very beginning, but I'm going to reframe this slightly to answer your question. When you go into a business, you're going into a place where there are people because that's where they work. But people don't go to work and stop being people. And if you go to work and you acknowledge every single person that is at work has a life, has trials, tribulations, successes, failings forward, they have everything. And that doesn't stop because they now have a function or they have something that they have to do. And you can support those people in being the best leader that they can be, because what I really do is support self-leadership. Every single person on the planet needs to be able to lead themselves, and that our responsibility as human beings is to lead ourselves to the highest capabilities of what we can do. And I want to drop this right up front, that your life, my life, anyone that's listening to this, your life is not about you. Your life is about what you do with your life. And what I mean is you have an experience, and how you react to that experience is going to drive how other people are going to learn from how you showed up to that, and they're going to take value and gain from that. And if you get knocked down and you stay down, you're teaching other people we get to quit. But if you get knocked down and you stand up and you say, man, that hurt, that stung, but I'm going to do it different, or I'm going to ask for help, or I'm going to have vulnerability, or I'm going to do what this next step. There are people around you that are going to learn, and they're going to learn, and they're going to emulate, and then they're going to repeat. And that is the beauty of doing leadership, because leadership is about how can I be the best leader that I can be right now. And if we're just waking up saying, I want to be the best leader, and we're grounding that in, I want to make more money, then you don't understand the definition of leadership. Because leadership is, by definition, holding one's hand and moving people forward. And I think that life, and we happen to be in business because that's where we make our money, but life is not about business. Life is about holding as many hands as we can and moving as many people in a common aligned goal to a unified vision where we can achieve the highest and the greatest potential of everybody. And I can't think of a single thing that's greater than doing that. And what I love so much about what you do is you're leading and inspiring people to create a robust self-discipline in how they show up every single day for themselves first. And when you pour into yourself, you have the power and the potential to pour into other people. But if you don't take care of you first, you've got nothing else to give anybody else. And so, leadership to me is really about how do you wake up and take care of you first so that you have something left to give to other people.
Oh man, amen to that. My framework on leadership is lead yourself, lead your family, and then you can lead your empire. But it needs to start with you. And that's just beautiful. Another aspect of leadership, I think, is alignment, purpose, and following your content. You talk about this quite often, about following your purpose, being aligned on that mission. How do you do that? If someone's listening to this and being like, hey, I want to show up better, I want to be a better leader, I want to be more intentional. How do I get in line? How do I find my purpose? Where does that come from?
So we're talking about alignment and we're talking about purpose, and those are two completely different things. And the reason I say that is because so many people say, man, I really want to be aligned to my purpose. And alignment really is about getting your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors to be in congruence with what it is that you want to achieve ultimately in life. And they're not the same thing. Getting your thoughts and your feelings and your behaviors into alignment, that's one thing. So we have to be aligned with what it is we want to have, be, do, and achieve. If you're a leader of an organization, you need to align your leadership team so that their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors are in alignment with what you want to do inside your company. I explode companies. I literally go in and I expand what companies believe is possible. And people are always like, oh my gosh, what did you do? And the only thing that we do is we align the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviors of all of the people in the leadership team, and then they go and they align the thoughts and the beliefs and then the behaviors of everybody else that's below them, and the business starts to grow because you get rid of all of the gunk. And alignment is such a powerful part of leadership. But when we talk about passion, we need to know why we're waking up every day. You see, I believe in a flow and a force that is so big, so great, so bold, and it put everything together in this perfect synchronicity. And I don't wake up every single day and think my life is about making money. My life is about building an empire. My life is about having a big company and doing 8 figures or 10 figures. My life is about, in every single moment at a grocery store, being kind to the bagger. And it's about smiling at somebody that's crossing the street. It's about being courteous to the person that's rude to me on my airplane flight this morning. It's in every single moment is being aligned with what is my passion and what is my purpose and what is my commitment to who I came here to be. And I came to create an impact. And so if I was only wanting to be the best motivational speaker, the best coach, the best business mentor that I could be, well, then that means I can be a dick to the guy on the plane this morning because he was rude to me. And so I could turn to him and be like, dude, and just give him a hard time, or I could ignore him or not be polite. But that wasn't my commitment. My commitment was to be the highest and the greatest that I can be. Self-leadership in every level, especially when somebody is rude or when somebody's not being kind or when somebody's not doing what you want them to do. And treating them with kindness, with love, and with respect. And so if I want to be the greatest motivational speaker in the history of the world, not that that's my goal, but if I wanted to be, well, then that would include the guy on the plane this morning. That would include the person at the grocery store. And those are the moments of when you stop and no one's watching, there's no cameras rolling, and nobody's going to see what you're doing, and you just treat people with kindness, with compassion, with love, and with respect, because that's the meaning of life. And if you can stop and talk to somebody like a bagger at a grocery store and say to them, man, I just really appreciate you. What you do really helps me. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. I remember a time when I used to have to bag my groceries all the time. And I actually drive further to this store because I know I have the support and it helps me. And sometimes I can be on a text or a phone call or a something, but I just need you to know I really value and appreciate you. Thank you, man. I want to buy you a candy bar or something, like, what's your favorite? Like, let's pick one and each have the same one. And you have that interaction with somebody at a store, and I use that example a lot. You see somebody's light bulb go off. You see a different look of recognition in them because somebody else has seen them, valued them, heard them, and appreciated them. And because that person didn't pay me $50,000, does it take away from the experience that they just had? And it doesn't. It adds to the experience because it wasn't for social media. It wasn't for a paycheck. It wasn't for a contract. It was because we're human beings. My passion and purpose is to impact the world. I want to impact 8 billion lives. That goal's going to change next year because there'll be more people, and so the number will keep climbing. But my goal and purpose is anchored in the greatest impact of every person on the planet. But to be in alignment means that in that moment when I don't want to, when I'm tired at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm talking to a grumpy guy on an airplane, all of those things that have to fall into place, they only fall into place because I'm committed to that big vision.
That's beautiful, man. As I'm hearing you kind of articulate your perspective on alignment and purpose and following that, the thought that came through my mind is the work that's needed to be done to self-master, to be a student of the process, to continue to learn, to develop yourself from a professional and personal growth perspective. And when I look at leadership, there's many different aspects to it, but I try to build a person that other people admire, that I admire, right? And what you just laid out is an act of doing that. So another thing that you mentioned that I want to kind of touch on and get some more insight from, you talk about when you wake up and you start today. Now, when I follow your content and engaging with it, one of the things you talk about quite often is starting your day, priming your day. The first 20 minutes is so important. From a leadership perspective, from a high performance perspective, what does that look like? What's the framework and why is that so important?
So I love that you asked that question. I teach a process called priming. And priming is a very, very specific neuroscience-backed formula for how everybody should wake up every single day. And I'm not talking about Raman Sharma's 5 a.m. club. I'm not trying to get people to jump out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get up between 4 and 5 every day. That's a choice. You can wake up between 10 and 11 a.m. I don't care. It's when you wake up, what do you do? What is the very specific thing that you need to do? And that process I teach is called priming. But I'm saying that because I want to clarify. Whether you're aware of the process or not, you're priming your brain. And every single day you prime your brain to be who you are. But you need to understand, what does the brain do and how does the brain function and how can you manipulate or hack the brain to be optimized for success. And so I teach priming for success because you're priming right now to produce the life that you already have. You see, when you wake up every single day, your brain is all the way back down to neutral. It forgets who you are, forgets who you were, forgets who you want to be, and you start at a very calm place. I call that your centered point. And then as you start to wake up, your brain starts to wake up and it looks around your room and your surroundings and it tries to remember, who are you, who were you, how did you feel, what's going on in your life. Then you think about your client that really made you mad yesterday, or you think about the conversation you had with your spouse and you haven't resolved it yet and you're starting to get a little bit of anxiety. You turn on the news and you hear about the latest forest fires in California. There's a drought. The taxes are going up. Interest rates are back to 7. We thought they were going down again. And all of a sudden, you have a tremendous amount of information that's flooding at you. 98% of people wake up and touch their freaking cell phones first thing in the mornings. And as they open up their cell phones, they are being stimulated by an outside source. And now let me really bring this around. Because every single time you think a thought produces an emotion. Every time you think something, forest fires again, you have an emotion related to that. Taxes are going up. You have an emotion related to that. My wife didn't see me, value me, appreciate me. You have an emotion around that. How much money do I have in my bank account? Emotion on that. It's tax season. Emotion on that. And all of a sudden, all these things start to cause you to feel something.
Oh, yeah.
What few people know is that your emotions control all of your behaviors. You see, the world is actually curating that you've got to do action to create results. If you don't put in the work, you don't get the results. Now, I speak into you've got to wake up and do the work every single day. Totally, because we need to do some work, right? If you want to have a healthy body, you're going to have to lift the weights. You're going to start with the pink, and then eventually you're going to progress. But there has to be a place where you start, and there has to be a place where you do the work, and then eventually you're going to get stronger and better at it. But the work is not the part of the process where people get stuck. They get stuck long before that, because it's the part of the body that says, man, I really want to be healthy. I really want to achieve success. I want to have a better marriage. They know they want it, and they legitimately want it, and they're prepared to do the work. So what stops them from doing the work? It's not to lift the weight and, man, that was heavy and hard. anyone who goes and lifts a weight knows you feel significantly better afterwards than you went going in. And you've got a self-driving force that's already supporting you and continuing the progress. But something stops the majority of people. And that is because 98% of people on the planet live a life by default. They're reacting to situations and circumstances, and they're not carefully planning who do they want to be, how do they want to show up, and what do they want their life to look like. And so if you were to wake up in the morning and not allow your brain to go back and remember the memories of the past, because everything that you are remembering, emotion is simply just an intellectual interpretation of information the brain saw or observed. And as it observed something, it says to the body, well, we now need to take this information, and we need to put it in the body so the body knows how to process what the brain intellectually understood. That process, that exchange is called emotion. And so as you have the thought dumps the emotion into the body, and the body says, oh, we've got to feel bad, oh, we've got to have anxiety, we've got to have stress, and that starts to produce those fear, fight, or flight reactors, whatever the emotions are inside the human body. But you have anywhere from 35,000 to 50,000 thoughts a day. High performers up to 85,000 thoughts, depending on what doctor you speak to. So if you take that is like a ping, 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 ping. Those are the thoughts, and every ping produced an emotion, and the emotions are going into the body. And all of those emotions, 95% of them are memories of your past. So you're remembering when a girl broke up with you when you were 13 years old. You don't remember it because it's in the unconscious mind. You waking up, happily married, living in your house, life is good, money in the bank, successful business. Nothing in your life in that moment is wrong. You wake up, your brain triggers the memory of that in the past. It all of a sudden puts the emotion of that into your body. You feel the emotion. You don't understand the context, where or why. Now you feel a little bit sad. You pick up your cell phone, and all of a sudden the brain says, there's 10 million bits of data coming to us every single second, and we're going to narrow those 10 million bits of data down to 50 bits of information to reinforce how were we feeling last. Oh man, we were feeling heart sore, last, sad, and so it disregards all of the other information, focuses only in on the 50 bits. They're going to keep you feeling the way that you were feeling based on what you were thinking last. And so that's why when most people wake up and they live in their same home, they see their same things, they touch their same phone, they do the same routine again and again and again, that is an automated process. They're no longer conscious, they are unconscious. Now I said 95% of all of the thoughts and the feelings that you have are unconscious, and they're tied to the 95% of your behaviors. If you're over the age of 35, 95% of every single thing that you do every day is not even you. You are not even you. You were
95%.
95%. You are a program. If I walk into a room and I say to you, hey man, would you like a cup of coffee or would you like a bottle of water? You're not actually going to make the choice. Your brain is not going to say, which one do we really want? Do we feel like, well, actually, I'm a little part. No, your brain's going to go to the default of how have you reacted in the past, because it's automated the response. It's going to say, great, water, because that's a decision that you made at one time.
Totally.
But now if somebody came to you and said, hey man, I've got an investment opportunity for you. You need to put 100 grand in, and this is what it's going to look like. But this morning you woke up and you learned about tax going up. You talk, the interest rates are going through the roof. You saw the latest forest fires, and there was fear, fight, or flight that was coursing through your body because you were thinking, wow, that's terrible. Even if it wasn't associated to you, you were feeling an emotional reaction to it. Now when someone comes to you and says, hey, I'd love for you to invest in this thing, and you normally would be interested in that and you would be well versed in it, your brain's going to default the thought pattern and say, mayday, 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 because you were thinking fear. And so the brain's going to say, man, we need to divide this. That could potentially cause us pain. And so let's not look at what could cause us the pleasure. We need to avoid the pain. And so I don't think we should do that. And then it's going to go into your memory banks, and it's going to bring every memory that is tied to a similar time you ever made a similar decision and it didn't work out for you, because it's trying to prevent you from feeling the pain. And so it dumps the emotion again and again and again. And so you don't take up the opportunity and you pass it by. And then later you find out you could have, would have, should have. And you go to work and you make decisions from that point. And so priming is about waking up every single day and carefully deciding, how do I want to be today? Who do I want to be? And not looking at outside stimuli to say, this is how I should be. I wake up between 4 and 5 in the morning. I do not talk to my wife when I wake up. My wife does not talk to me. We are two ships passing in the night. We go to two different places in our home. She goes to her office. I go to my office. We close our door and we spend the first 20 minutes to the first hour pouring into ourselves. Whether that is, you want to read scriptures, whether you want to journal, whether you want to meditate, whether you want to sit by yourself, that's up to you. But I'm going to give you the formula of what your brain is requiring you to do to set you up for success. Anything else is setting you up for something, but it's going to look very similar to what your life has always looked like. When I talk to people, I always ask them, how have you been feeling? Because if I ask you how you're feeling and you give me an honest answer about how you're feeling, we can actually start to see the patterns, because how you felt today is how you felt yesterday, the day before that, and which means your life is never going to change. I'm going to slow down because this is a lot for anyone that's listening. If you want to change something, something in you has to change. If you want to do something you've never done, well, logic tells us you have to do something you've never done to get a result you've never achieved, right? So when you wake up in the morning, what if you didn't grab your cell phone? What if you didn't run downstairs and grab your cup of coffee? What if you didn't turn on the news? What if you didn't talk to your partner? What if you didn't open your email? What if you didn't go to your desk at 5 o'clock in the morning and start responding to emails because no one's bugging you? And what if instead you went and sat quietly on a couch or in a chair somewhere in your home where no one was going to disturb you? And you did a gut check and you asked yourself, how do I feel right now? And you pay attention and you're like, you know what, I have a little bit of anxiety in my stomach. Okay, well, your stomach is your guidance system. So if I have anxiety, what am I cautious about? What am I worried about? Well, you know what, I'm worried about this meeting I have to have with my manager because I might have to fire the manager. And so you realize, okay, you have anxiety about potentially firing your manager because you don't want to fire them because you like them, but they're not doing what they need to be doing. So you have stress around that. Well, if you don't clear that, you're going to be making decisions later from anxiousness. You're going to identify that you are anxiousness, you are nervous. That's why people say, I am depressed, I am tired, I'm sad, I'm sick. No, you're not. Those are emotions that you've turned into a reality. But if you can feel that there's anxiousness and then say, why do I feel anxious? Well, I'm worried about this person. Okay, well, how am I going to show up? And you start to talk yourself through the process, you can release the emotion. I teach a process where you can go into your mind, breathe in, breathe out, and release the stress, the fear, the anxiety, and become really calm. I refer back to the center point, you with outside emotion. Nothing is influencing you. That is the closest you can be to who you were created to be. That is you in your powerful form, the same force that created the universe. And in that moment, there's no emotion. I then teach you to forecast a goal or a vision. I use a trigger word, and that is to fantasize. And if you've ever had a sexual fantasy, which I imagine you would have had, that the sexual fantasy is a scene that is playing in your mind from the past, it's playing from a potential future, or it's playing from a scene that is never going to happen, but your body is reacting in real time as if it is happening to you right now. And in that moment, you feel like, holy smokes, this is amazing. You open your eyes and you're just sitting by yourself, but it felt real. Blood's pumped to different parts of your body, your heart rate's accelerated, your palms are sweaty, and you're having an incredible time in your head, but your body's literally there, but none of that is real. But what happens in a fantasy is you have an imaginary thought, but you match it with the intensity of the emotion. Remember, thoughts produce emotions. With the intensity of the emotion as if it is real, and the physiological state changes. And so when your body changes, it aligns. Your body aligns to the end result as if it's already achieved it. Your brain doesn't know whether you did or whether you didn't. Your brain tells your body, this is real, it's happened. So that fantasy in your head, you've lived it, you've had it, you've experienced it because your body has physically had the experience equal to the experience itself. So now I want you to fantasize not about some silly dream, but what I want you to fantasize about is your life. What do you want to have? So if you want to start a company and build an empire, you want to own a jet, a yacht, you want to have 1,000 employees, you want to stand on a stage in front of 85,000 people. That's my goal. And I want to stand
85,000.
85,000 people, 40 weeks a year until I'm 103. And so my goal is
Till you're 103.
Until I'm 103.
I like your style, my friend.
That's why I do stem cell therapy, brother. So
intentionality,
yes.
My friends. Like what I'm hearing is intentionality, the opposite of how most people navigate their lives, which is just by reaction versus intentionality. Love it.
Everything, you have to be intentional because otherwise you're living a life by default.
Totally.
And so if you're focused in on what would it feel like to stand on stage being Rudi at 103 years old in front of 85,000 people every single week, I want to say 40 weeks a year is what my goal is. And so if that's where I'm wanting to go and where I'm wanting to head, and I can go into my mind in a meditative state and fantasize about what that would feel like and have the experience of being on stage, seeing the people, seeing the tears, seeing the breakthrough, seeing the crying, turning and seeing my family, walking off stage, high-fiving everybody, giving them a hug, getting into the town car and going to the hotel and talking about, oh my God, did you see this person? Did you see this? And breaking down the event and actually experiencing that in my mind, on my couch, in my home, at 4 o'clock in the morning in North Carolina, and I can feel that my body doesn't know if that's real or fake. It just thinks it's real, and so it changes the same way your body changes in a fantasy. And so sexual fantasy, future forecasting fantasy, they're doing the same thing, except now your body has aligned not only the thoughts, the feelings, but your energetic state of your body. Every cell in your body is vibrating to match the frequency of that experience, and now you're drawing the power of the universe to you. So people talk about creation, they talk about law of attraction, And this is the literal gateway to having, being, doing, and achieving anything and everything that you want. And it is the process of going into your mind, creating the event, connecting to the end result of the emotion of what it is you're wanting to experience, experiencing it, believing it, feeling it. Because now when you open your eyes, your brain is now accessing different parts of your brain that were dormant. You feel alive, you were created, you're confident because you've already done it, you've lived it, you've experienced it. You're not like, oh, will I? No, you did, you've done it. And so you're going to make very different decisions today. That's going to get you into the gym. That's going to get you to do stem cell therapy. That's going to get you to, take that extra client. That's going to take you to read that extra book. It's going to take you to work the extra hour because you're doing the things in alignment, in accordance with the end result of what it is you're wanting. I've simplified the process because there's more. You've got to take what was in your mind and you have to bring it into the physical. And so, there's processes where you have to be able to journal and put in statements of what you've done and stacking evidence. But it gives you the tools to be able to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. For anybody that's listening to this and doubting, like, well, that sounds like a little bit of work. Well, I'm going to tell you now, anything that you want to have me do and achieve is going to take a little bit of work.
Amen.
But what is more work? Sitting in your living room at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning and spending 20 minutes in your mind while your body is trying to decide how do you want to feel today. And then in the first 20 minutes, the brain is the most susceptible to change and influence. And if you can manipulate how you feel in 20 minutes, your brain's going to put a pin in that emotion and say, got it. That's how I want to feel today. Mm-hmm. And so you're now going to feel exhilarated. You're going to feel, joyful, abundant, free. Or you could wake up, watch Fox News, walk out your room, pissed off, angry, upset, resentful, tired, irritated. And that's your brain's going to say, oh, got it. That's how I want to feel today. And which decisions are you going to be making? Because your brain's going to make decisions from two different vantage points based on those two different emotional paths. And the person you want to be is going to be the one that's intentional about how do they want to be and how do they want to live and what do they want to do and achieve. And I brought it into companies and watched organizations go from 400 million and in 12 months go to $1 billion. I've seen small companies go from 10 grand a month to 100 grand a month to 300 grand a month in weeks, like weeks of doing the work in each month. And so the results are truly profound, but you have to put in the work. And how many people are willing to do work? Because, I'm going to use the analogy of the gym because I worked in a gym when I was in my 20s. And
in South Africa.
In South Africa, selling gym memberships. And so here's the interesting thing is, you go to the gym and you don't see anything for the first few weeks. And then all of a sudden, you have a little shift in your body and you feel a little different and you start looking and flexing in the mirror and you start to get the results of the work that you're doing. So you keep going back and then you have gains and then times where you stall, but you have evidence. What I'm telling you to do is to go into your mind and you don't have evidence. Right. You just have to keep going back into your mind. But the thing is, it's harder to go and do the work and do the grind and push every day and work harder than it is to go into your mind, create it, and then draw it to you. And so the process is faster, but you have to have a process of trust in between. And so that's the muscle I'm going to challenge your audience to flex into, is trusting that even though you cannot see the end result, it's coming to you faster than you ever imagined, and it'll come in a way that you've never believed possible.
That's your challenge, my friends. Here we go. Intentionality, this is something we just talked about, you've said a few times over. I want to give you the opportunity just to storytell a little bit of the intentionality. Is blown away. We're just connecting off camera. Coming from South Africa, why do you live in Wilmington, North Carolina? It's just the purest form of intentionality. I want to throw that softball to you.
Oh my gosh. So this is one of my favorite stories. And, I was living in South Africa, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And I love the country of South Africa. I love the people of South Africa, but I love more than anything the nature and the feeling of the country. My wife and I just came back from a trip to South Africa now in January, and at the time of recording this, just a few months ago, and she turned around and she was like, this is the most incredible country that I've ever been to. Like, there's this magnetic energy. It's incredible.
Was that the first time she'd been?
And the first time she'd ever been to South Africa. She's very well traveled, just never South Africa. And so we're standing there and I'm just remembering the flood of emotions of what it's like to live in this beautiful, majestic country. And growing up, I always wanted to be in South Africa. I never wanted to leave. I wanted this to be my home. I was very proud, very passionate. But there was a tremendous amount of crime, there was instability, there was a lot of political issues, and eventually got to the point where I moved and I decided I needed to find somewhere else to live. But the only place that I could see myself ever living was a scene of a movie or a show that I had watched as a kid. And so when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, I watched Dawson's Creek. And Dawson's Creek was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I didn't know it was Wilmington, North Carolina. I just knew it was this coastal town that looked like my coastal town, and that North Carolina was safe, and that where I was from wasn't as safe. And I wanted to give my kids my childhood, but I wanted to give it to them in a safe environment. And so at 17, 18, 19 years old, I said, I'm going to live in Wilmington, North Carolina one day, after I'd learned where they were filming it. And then that was my response. Anytime anyone ever said to me, where are you going to be? I'm going to live in Wilmington, North Carolina, because I had this picture in my mind of giving my kids my childhood. And when I met my wife, which was many years later, 12 years after that, actually, we were on our first date. And it wasn't even a date, it was the first day we met. And I started interviewing her right away, like dog person, cat person, like what are your interests? Do you read? Do you work? Like just totally diving in, because I knew she was the one. And I asked her, where do you want to live one day? And she's from Texas, and she said, well, I currently live in Austin, Texas. That's where my parents are. She's like, but I could be anywhere, but I really want to live in North Carolina. And I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what are the odds of that? I was like, I want to live in North Carolina. And so I said to her, where do you want to live? And she said, Wilmington. And then it was like, God, me too. I was like, I want to live in Wilmington. I was like, what is it like? I've never been. And she turned around, she says, I've never been. And so both of us wanted to live in Wilmington, North Carolina, but for two different reasons. Mine was because I watched Dawson's Creek, and I wanted to give my kids that childhood, that safety, that freedom, which they have today, and I'm so grateful for it. My wife went to a summer camp with a whole bunch of strangers, from all over the country, and her best friend in the summer camp was a little girl from Wilmington, North Carolina, and she would talk about this town that she grew up in, and the waves, and surfing with her dad, and being on the beaches in the morning, and the private barrier islands, and like what a weekend looks like for them. And she was like, I want to give that to my kids. And so I think my wife and I just aligned energetically on a path where we both wanted the same things, and we drew each other to each other.
That is just a mic drop story. I just love it in so many, characteristics. And again, going back to the intentionality of it, it's just absolutely beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
A couple other questions around leadership before we wrap the conversation. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is intuition. And this is something that you talk about as well. And from a leadership framework, I'm curious, as a leader, how important it is to have intuition in terms of how you execute, how you lead yourself and your team, et cetera, and then how do you develop more intuition?
God, I love this question, and I wish everybody would ask this question. It is probably one of the most important questions that anybody could ever ask of themselves. And I love that you're asking it on this platform, because no one listening to this is going to expect the response. At least I don't think so. We're talking about leadership, and leadership is usually these hard skills where we have to read a book, learn a thing, do something, say something a certain way. Mm-hmm. But what we're omitting is the brilliance and the genius and the ingenuity that is us. And I alluded to it earlier, that we're connected to the tapestry of the divinity that has created the universe, and it is flowing to us and through us. And through extension, we are that force, because there is no separation between us and what created us. And if that flow and force is flowing to me and through me, mm-hmm. then I have information flowing to me and through me. And if I'm not making choices and decisions about life and business, about the information coming to me and through me, and I'm choosing external information to validate what I should be feeling and trusting, then I'm not living my highest and my greatest potential. And so I love to teach people, and that's why I'm just smiling, because I love your question, because I had no idea you were going to be asking it today. But I love to teach people that we have this intelligence within us, and that we have to trust ourselves. And your stomach is your guidance system, and it's always going to tell you whether you're right or whether you're wrong. But your body is also telling you whether you're right or whether you're wrong. And you can do things like muscle testing on, is this something I should eat? Should I not eat this? Should I have more of this, less of this? Should I go on this date? Should I not see this person? Should I make this business decision? Should I not? And you can literally test muscle testing. You can push your arm down. There's things you can do that support you in telling you whether you should or you shouldn't. And there's unbelievable resources that you can go and read that supports you in that. The greatest tool that I've ever gained was sitting with myself. I told you that every day for, I want to say, going on almost 20 years now, I've sat with myself. And when you sit with yourself and you release your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and you connect to just who do you feel like without emotion, you really start to learn who are you. You start to pay attention to the thoughts that come to you and the decisions that you make. And then you feel really good about understanding this is who I am. And then I walk out of my office and I pick up my phone, talk to my kids, having a conversation with my wife, maybe a client calls me, respond to an email, and all of a sudden information's coming to me. and all that information is producing emotion. Or sometimes the emotion is coming from my wife. Maybe my wife has a really big meeting today and she's nervous and anxious. And because I'm spending time with her, I pick up her nervousness and anxiousness. And if I'm not aware of how I feel, I start to feel nervous and anxious. And so I now think I'm nervous and anxious. So I'm making decisions from nervousness and anxiousness. But when I know who I am and how I feel and I've hit my center point and now I move forward in my day, I'm now moving forward without emotion. So when I can walk into a room, I can tell you how you feel. I can tell you what it feels like to be you because all I am is standing in your space and I feel you. And I'm like, oh, that's what he feels like because your energy starts to communicate with my energy. And so that is me picking up information. And that information is invaluable if you want to be somebody who takes themselves seriously, who makes the best decisions for themselves and for the people around them. But even if you're selling something, wouldn't you want to know what somebody's feeling or thinking? And the only way you can do that is to lean into how do you feel before you walk into a room. And so every time I do anything, I get into an Uber to come over to meet you, I need to know how do I feel before I get in there because I'm about to spend 30 minutes with some stranger that I've never met before that's going to be thinking and feeling something, and I'm going to pick up their energy, and I don't want to identify with their energy, so I need to know how do I feel. And then when I walk into this room, I'm now meeting you and your team, and that's all of a sudden energy, and I will need to know what do I feel like. And only if I can discern who did I feel like, what did I feel like before I walked in, am I going to know who I am when I'm in the room. Void of the additional information and stimulation that's coming to me. Now, that wasn't the question you asked, but that was the prelude to the question, because the answer to the question is when you need to make a decision, now you need to go back to what is you with your center point without emotion, ask the question, and then the answer is going to feel expansive or it's going to feel restrictive. If I just said to you right now, well, do you want to have Thai food tonight or do you want to have Indian food tonight? And those are your only two options. And you're thinking, well, man, both of them sound a little heavy. They've got a lot of oil, it's not my ideal. You're now thinking with logic and you're going to go to a default pattern of how your brain's always responded. But if I said to you Indian or Thai, and you knew what you felt like before the question, you were calm and centered, or I got you to be in a calm and centered space, and then you said Indian food, and then you feel your body, Thai food, and then one of them is more expansive than the other. And it actually feels like your body, the energy in your body becomes lighter and more free. One of them is going to make your body feel more restrictive. The one that's more restrictive, that's the no. The one that feels more expansive, that's the yes. Now let's bring this full circle. I used to run a really big company, almost 10-figure organization, and we had to make business decisions every single day. And the business decisions that we were making were like, do we put this person on and they need to generate $1 million in 1 hour? And if we put the wrong person on and we're in 2-3 weeks in, we're losing tens of thousands, millions of dollars, and are we going to make that up? And just one word wrong, one sentence, one thing, and you're now stacking a lot of zeros that you now have to recoup, and it's hard to recoup that. So if you make the wrong decision, even if it's for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they come with really big costs. And so we'd have to make these decisions. And my team would come to me and they'd be like, okay, we need to make 5 moves. This is what we need to do. We need to pull this person out of this territory. We need to put these people in. And I would say to them, okay, so tell me through logic, like give me the stats. What has this person done? Where are their strengths? Where are the weaknesses? And we would talk about the actual person and what their credentials are. And then I would say, okay, thank you. Could you give me a few minutes and close my door? And then they would all leave. And then I would just sit with myself and I would breathe in, breathe out, and I get really calm. And then one by one, I would say, is this person right for this region? And I would sit with it. And then I'd read the next name. And then I'd read the next name. And the one that felt the most expansive, that was the one I gave the assignment to. I call my team back in and I'd be like, all right, we're going to go with this person. And they'd be like, but that person doesn't make any sense. Did you not hear a word of what we just said? And I'm like, you guys have got to trust me. This is the one we're going with. And then eventually we taught the team how to do it. And they started making decisions that way. And the business flourished because we were making decisions based on information we don't understand. Because there's information all around us and it's flowing to us and through us. But if we're only making decisions based on logic and reason, I want to remind you that all of your decision-making processes are based on 50 bits of data, not 10 million bits of data every single second, and you're making them based on how you were feeling lost, not based on who it is you want to be or where you want your company to go or what you want to achieve. And that's how I support companies to expand. And it doesn't matter who the company is, what they've done, what they've achieved, where their company is. I went into an organization that was trailing down for 5 years, losing tens of millions every single year, and within 8 months they broke their all-time 30-year revenue record. And the only thing that they did was align their people to be happier, more joyful, to make decisions out of inspiration, intuition, creativity. Because the minute you go into stress, you lose inspiration, creativity, you lose the ability to be logical. And if you lose logic and reason, I mean, then who's sitting in that chair making the decision? It's irrational and it's illogical. And so that's where 75% of the human population lives, is in a chronic state of stress 75% of the time.
Rudi, I am inspired. Just your energy, specifically intuition, I resonate with so much about that energy and that flow through. So I'm going to literally ponder our conversation here as I continue to move forward. I got a ton of value. I know our audience did. Let me ask you this as we kind of wind down, and I'm inspired, I'm fired up, but maybe there's someone clearly who's inspired listening to us right now, but in a rough patch at life, they're feeling stuck. How would you recommend that person change their energy, shift their alignment, create more intentionality, so they can be the leader, the visionary, the person they're meant to be?
You know, the first thing I want to say is that to the person that is listening to this right now and is struggling because you're in a hard place, or life has maybe dealt you some cards, or a hand that you weren't expecting, or something didn't go the way that you wanted, or life feels really unfair. I can give you so many tips and tricks to get you out of feeling a little bit better and to make better decisions, but the first thing I want to do is pull up the handbrake and give you some relief. What's happening to you right now, or what happened to you 5 years ago or 10 years ago and you're still thinking and feeling about it today, has value and meaning. You know, I sat in a dancer's chair once and I was called stupid. And because I was called stupid and I made stupid decisions for more than 20 years from that vantage point before I started to take accountability for my life, it gave value and meaning to who I am and how I get to show up out in the world. And where you are right now has value and meaning. And there's something for you at the end of that experience of where you are. So don't skip over the pain too fast. And I don't want you to be in any pain, but don't skip over the moment. Don't get away from the struggle. Just first find the divinity in the moment and be like, fascinating. What am I learning here? What is the skill that I'm gaining here that if I hadn't had this, I wouldn't be able to do what it is I'm going to be doing? Because life is really a massive classroom, and it's preparing you and it's teaching you for who you get to be and for where you get to go and for what it is you get to achieve. And without all of your life experience, you wouldn't be there. You really would never get to the result of what it is that you want if you hadn't first gone through everything that you've been experiencing. And so first stop and have a look at where's the lesson, what's the value, what's the gain in where it is that I'm at, whatever that could be. It could be a divorce, it could be a bankruptcy, it could be, you know, somebody not wanting to give you a job, whatever that moment is. And then you've got to be able to take accountability for everything that you've ever thought, everything you've ever felt, and every decision you've ever made has led you to where you are right now. And if you want to change something, you actually physically have to change something. And so change requires doing something you've never done. And you've got to make a commitment to do something you've never done. But I said in the beginning of the podcast, I'll repeat it again, because people need to hear information many times for them to be able to grasp the information. The only reason you don't have what you want is because you either don't believe it's possible or you don't believe it's possible for you. And what you need to do is first prove to you that it's possible. Whatever you want to have, whatever you want to be, do, or achieve, find someone that is an expander for you that can demonstrate that it's possible. And so if I want to be on stage in front of 85,000 people and I want to do that till I'm 103, who is currently doing that at a high level? Tony Robbins is doing that.
Yes, he is.
Tony Robbins does it to 40,000 people, but I want to be in front of 85,000 people because that's how many people you can fit into a stadium. Well, 3 weeks ago, Taylor Swift went to Australia and she packed 94,000 people and 93,000 people, 2 different stadiums, 2 different nights. And now I'm like, I can fit 93 to 94,000 people in the stadium.
Let's go.
And so I have a new expander for me. Even though she's not a motivational speaker, she's not out there doing the work that I'm doing, she's demonstrating to me what's possible. And so now I know it's possible. So the next bridge is I need to say, is it possible for me? Mm-hmm. And if I wake up and I do the work, I'll see the evidence. I'd use the analogy of going to the gym, and at one point in time, you've got to pick up the pink weight, and you're going to be embarrassed because it's the small one, and it's colorful, and it's not the black one, and then you're going to have to work with that until you're strong enough to go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, and then you're on the black weights, and then eventually you start to see the gains. But you have to stack the evidence, and the only way you're ever going to get there is when you know that you are worthy of what it is that you want. You were put on this earth to do something and achieve something. That thing that is on your heart wasn't yours. It was given to you, and your responsibility is to bring it out into the world. Only when you bring it into the world, only when you do it, only when you achieve it, are you then living your purpose, because now you're in a position to turn around and teach it. And the meaning of life, for me anyway, is to give selflessly of yourself every day in every single way. Give everything that you have of yourself every day in every way, and you will be the happiest, most abundant, joyful person in the world. Because at one point in time, I believed it was going to be money, I believed it was going to be success, I believed it was going to be businesses and all these things, and none of that stuff did anything for me. I mean, yes, it was easier to make life decisions about what I'm going to do, but it didn't change how I felt internally. But if you can create that shift and that change in you now without the external things, everything else is going to come to you faster, and you're going to have the resilience to do the work in between to get you the results to do the work you've never done. And so find the evidence, find the expanders, and then start doing the work and stack the evidence.
And I believe, Rudi, that's where self-confidence, that's where self-trust comes in, by stacking the evidence. And when you do that, ultimately that creates confidence.
Absolutely.
All right, Rudi, this has been a freaking awesome conversation. I'm just so fired up. I'm grateful for you. Before we wrap today, my last question, the name of this podcast is the CEO Show, the Chief Executive Officer Show. What would you say in your words, Rudi? What does it mean to be a CEO?
The CEO is a person that is meant to be the bearer or the carrier or the visionary of a business, of what the vision is of where somebody is wanting to take the rest of the people inside the business. And so many people think that it's about moving the business, meaning you've got to hold the vision, you've got to carry the vision across, you bear the responsibility of the vision of the company. And I want to challenge every single CEO to realize that their responsibility is to impact the people that are inside their business, not the business. Because we're all human beings, and we're all human beings that have successes, failures, trials, tribulations, and we all show up to work as whole people. And then companies expect us to leave our personal lives at home, show up and do a job and to do it well. The CEOs that thrive, the companies that thrive, that are led by CEOs that understand that people are at work because they're being magnetized and aligned to the leader that can best serve and support them to achieve a higher level of awareness, to grow, to nurture them. And that a coach's job is really to be the CEO of the business. And the CEO is to be the coach and to turn around and say, all the people that are here, they're here because there's something that I have to offer them. And it's not a job, it's not a paycheck, and it's to teach them the practices, the disciplines, the self, leadership, and the way of being able to show up. And the best way to be able to do that is to do it through vulnerability. Every single person has a dream, a goal, or a desire to have something. And we think that the thing that we want to have is going to make us feel a certain way. But at the core, every human being only wants one thing, and it's not money. We want connection. We only want connection. And yes, we say we want other things, but it's grounded in connection. And the only way to create connection with two people is to have a vulnerable moment. And CEOs remove vulnerability from leadership because they think they need to be stoic. They think they need to know everything. They think they have to get everything right. And a true leader walks into a room with vulnerability, with kindness, with compassion, with love, and actually uses those words and holds one's hand by definition of the word leadership and marches them forward in a common and aligned goal. But the true definition of a leader is a leader that teaches people how to live and achieve their highest and their greatest potential. I support an organization, owner of the company is a billionaire, and nothing is ever good enough. Nothing is ever good enough. The revenue could be 200%, nothing's good enough. And the team will come to me and say, I just don't understand. Like, I do everything and it's just never good enough. I can't, this is at a burnout pace. So I brought the whole executive team together and I said, what is he teaching you? He's teaching you that there's always more. He's teaching you that if you can walk into a business and grow a business 40, 50, 60% over 3 or 4 years, could you not do that in your personal life? And what did you learn in your business that if you could take what he's teaching you in the business and apply it to your personal life, where would your life be today if you had done that over the last 4 to 5 years? Because that's what the leader's doing. And it's not about making more money, because I know this leader, and it's about teaching people that they can have more, they can stretch more, they can always achieve more. And that when we achieve something, let's celebrate it. And now what's next? Let's continue to expand, evolve, and grow. And that to me is the benefit of a leader. A leader that walks in and knows their responsibility is to impact every person in that business, not just the bottom line. And I'm going to tell you now, when you focus on the people and not the bottom line is going to move, and it's going to move in the most beautiful direction.
Amen. Mic drop. As a leader, you just inspired me, my friends. I know you got inspired as well. Rudi, if my audience hasn't connected with you before, where can they connect with you?
I've got one of those last names that is mispronounced and misspelled, and so I'm going to beg and urge everybody to go into the show notes and grab it there. But it is rudireekstins.com. That's RUDIRIEKSTINS. Or you can catch me at Instagram at Rudi Riekstins. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for your time today.
Dude, the feeling is mutual. And before we wrap today, number one, I want to thank you for being here, for serving my audience and just adding a lot of value. But more important than that, I knew going in, just doing some research, connecting with Amberly, you were going to show up with awesome energy, awesome vibes, awesome intentionality. I knew it was going to be great. It was even better. So I want to acknowledge you for that and thank you again for being of service.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity, for the platform, and for your energy more than anything else.
You got it. My friends, I know you got a ton of value from this episode. My one ask, like this and share this with someone that needs some inspiration, needs some better leadership and mindset. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. Rudy, appreciate you. And remember, adversity is your advantage. We'll see you in the next episode.